Hey guys, Taylor here. Welcome back to another episode. I'm very excited to welcome back Noel Eastwood. He's an astrologer, author, and psychologist. So, hi, Noel.
Hi, Taylor, and thanks very much again. This is going to be fun. This is comes from many years of research and studying charts because, like you, I need to know. I need to understand it. Once I understand it, then I can start doing things with it. I can help people, and actually to understand myself and my family, friends makes a big difference to know this. The features in the charts that I'll show people. Uh, they're going to stand out in people's memories because we're going to be seeing it a lot in people's charts.
Yeah, this is exciting because today we're going to be using actual charts that you asked your people from your newsletter, and you asked people if they would send in their own personal charts, but we've blocked out the personal information, so we won't be seeing anybody's name or any of that. But we have illustrations of what you'll be talking about today, which is ADD, ADHD, and some learning disorders, which before we get started, you're going to give us some descriptions of those and the symptoms, right?
Yep, that's right. Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, if you want to get started, today's topic is ADD, ADHD, and learning disorders such as dyslexia. And Noel has many years of experience with this. And so I'm going to hand it over because I'm learning along with everybody else here. And yeah, I can't wait to see it illustrated in some charts.
Okay, so I'll get started. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're looking at is children's disorders that parents will find, teachers will find, social workers, psychologists, counselors, school counselors that they'll bump into. It it interestingly, neurological difficulties, which is what this class of disorders come under, they're all neurological. They all come from the brain. So and it's not necessarily going to be uh, genetic. Sometimes stress and trauma will actually create stress hormones that damage the nerves. So children with some that will present with disorders at school, like ADD, learning difficulties, anxiety, that could be a consequence of trauma. So we're going to look at a lot of charts and see how that will play out. So astrology can be used as a guide to personality traits, neurological functions, and disorders. It's not an accurate nor accepted method, so don't use it for any form of diagnosis. So please, astrology is, our knowledge of astrology is still in its infancy.
Mhm.
So we use these charts to give us a bit of an idea. We look at the themes flowing through it, but you wouldn't tell someone, "Oh, look at that, you've got a bipolar disorder because of these things in the chart." You wouldn't say anything like that, or ADHD. Okay, so the first one is ADD, attention deficit disorder, inattentive. So what I'm looking for is a heavy influence on water in particular, and we'll sometimes see a dominance of air because too much air can make that person just too much in their heads. So a child that presents with inattention can either be the dreamy, daydreamy Pisces, Scorpio, Neptune, Moon, a 12th house dominance. They can be daydreamy, or they can be just super busy in their head. They're just processing so much information that's coming at them that they just can't stay on task. So we'll be looking at that. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So the main features there are hyperactivity and impulsivity. So the impulsivity is it's like there's the last chocolate biscuit on the table at a party, and I'm going to eat it without even thinking because I'm impulsive. So I ate that biscuit and then realized, oh dear, how embarrassing. I had no control over that impulse, and everyone's looking at me. So we're looking at a dominance of fire and air. So that's what we're looking for, and it can be in the houses. the first, the third, the fifth, and I actually have a picture here for you. Let me get that over here.
It's interesting
So
that
what?
Earth isn't.
Yeah,
That Earth isn't. You have the other three. So sorry, not to interrupt. Keep going.
yeah, very much so. It's we would think, okay, people with too much Saturn or too much Capricorn would be too highly structured, but it's not really the case. We need structure to be successful.
Mhm.
So, in what I've found by looking at all the charts is the two active signs are fire and air. So, if you want to generate energy, you look to air and fire,
Right.
whereas the passive signs are water and earth. They're not so dynamic, and it comes up in successful people who actually have a dominance of air and fire. Most successful people, particularly athletes, but also scientists and business CEOs, they have ADHD. They got a lot of air and fire because it is so dynamic and driven. Whereas water tends to engage the person too much in the emotions around them, and they become too engaged in people and managing people and their own emotions with people.
Mm.
The earth is a little bit too structured, so they'll sit down and play chess or go and tinker on the car. So they're a little bit detached. They just go off on their own. But if we have a lot of air and fire plus a strong earth, then they're going to use the dynamic energy of air and fire in the construction of what the earth can give them. So they're doing things. Earth is physical and doing. If they have a little bit of water in that mix, then they're probably going to be a little bit more compassionate. And sometimes we see a lot of rulers, leaders, cult leaders, politicians. Oh my goodness, aren't there some lunatics out there? We would see them very strong in the ADHD, very strong in the air and fire, where when we push it to the extreme end, we're going to see that there's more narcissistic psychopathic tendencies, whereas down the narrow end of that spectrum, which we'll look at in a minute. In fact, I'll get it up now. So this is the spectrum. All of our neurological disorders, from borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, multiple personalities, PTSD, anxiety, depression, narcissism, psychopathy, they're all somewhere on this spectrum. So this end here has heaps of symptoms. Every symptom, a dysregulated symptom imaginable, can go into these extreme psychoses of borderline personality and schizophrenia. So they're pretty darn hard to work with. But when we look at borderline, that's particularly can be helped quite a lot with certain therapeutic sort of approaches. Schizophrenia is a lot harder, but nothing is incurable in my mind anyway. So down this end, there's very few symptoms. So that's where we're going to find people that are cold and just don't have much emotion. And we're going to see, psychopathic sort of traits and narcissistic traits in some of them. So it's important that we remember that not everyone with these astrological significators and complexes are going to exhibit what we find in these charts. But generally speaking, we're in here, we're in the middle. Most people are they got symptoms. We have anxiety, we have depression, we get sad, we get happy, we get a bit funny. So we're in the moderate arousal is where the bulk of the people are. In the higher arousal, with extreme numbers of symptoms, we're going to start to see the OCD, panic disorders, complex PTSD, or just garden variety PTSD is bad enough as well. Sociopaths. Sociopaths, the best way to describe the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is the sociopath is standing behind you in the supermarket. They got their trolley in that's loaded with all this junk food, and you step back and knock the trolley and things fall off. Now, the person with sociopathy is going to just freak out. They're going to throw the things in the air, they're going to abuse people, and they're going to lose it, and then they're going to storm out. So they have a very, very short wick. Whereas the psychopath is going to go, they'll slowly, carefully pick up their belongings, go through, but they're going to watch where you park your car because they're going to get back to you. So they premeditated. So the symptom model of neurological symptoms and disorders is the best way to understand it is on a spectrum. And I've worked with people with these really difficult disorders, and we can bring them down here using, different techniques, which we can talk about in later sessions as well, methods to help our neurological symptoms. Okay, so I'm going to just take that off, and God blimey, fancy not seeing that down there. Right. Now, where was I? Yeah, so the houses and the signs. The signs are fire, air, fire, air, fire, and air. So these ones are the dynamic ones, and anything sitting in those signs or houses, because the houses correlate with signs and they correlate with planets. So when they're sitting in an activated house or an activated sign, then that planet will generate more energy. Whereas if it's in a water or an earth, there's going to be a little bit less energy. And that's the way I see it. So I'm going to put that to sleep. Right, come back up here. Learning difficulties, and by jingoes, isn't there a lot? The big one, I think, is the sensory processing disorder, this one here. That's where the child is just overwhelmed with stimulation, and they just can't process it. It's like in schools where I've moved from Canberra, Canberra schools, they have a lot of open classrooms, which means you've got 4 classrooms with no front to them, and they all look into the wash basins and the computers and the art room. So you've got a class of 30 children looking this way to the teacher and the whiteboard. But every child that walks past in that common room makes a bit of a noise, there's giggling. So the disruption there is going to trigger anyone with inattention or hyperactivity or impulsivity. So the poor teachers are trying to keep the attention on what they're doing, but then the poor kids with the sensory processing disorder, which basically covers all of these learning disorders, they're constantly distracted, so they're not going to be able to focus. So then that's one lesson that we can take from this is don't overload, don't overstimulate your child. You would down the bottom here, and we can put this up in the notes as well and have it available. But things like soft music. When I was teaching many, many years ago, I always had in those days it was a cassette player, and I always had music on. Sometimes it would be kids' songs, so when the kids are doing maths or something boring or artwork, they'd be singing along while they're doing their stuff. Sometimes it would be environmental sounds like the waves or something like that, if you're going to do a meditation with them, a guided meditation. Or it could just be soft music. So we're looking to bring down that arousal, bring it down. Other things that help, of course, are rules. Kids need rules. When you're not enforcing rules, kids that don't have boundaries, and we're talking about these children, they don't understand boundaries. They don't understand social cues. They don't understand visual cues. Particularly as you get into the autism spectrum, they're not picking up the cues. So they're very anxious because they're doing things like they think it's the right thing, but they get into trouble for it. Same with ADHD. They're constantly in trouble because, well, for starters, their motor is revving so fast they can't slow down. But the other point is that they're not quite sure what the situation, what are the right things for this situation. They're looking at the visual cues on the children's faces or the teachers' faces or their body language, and then not quite getting it right. And in social settings, they don't quite know those rules either. So having rules and setting limits to their behavior allows them or gives them the opportunity to learn to self-regulate. In fact, I really should put that up here. Self-regulate
So
their own behavior. There we go.
would
Yep.
these children benefit from verbal guidance more so when you say rules? Are these children that need like verbal guidance and to set these boundaries and to help them practice the boundaries
Okay.
that are verbal?
This is what I've got here. So often what happens with a word is it stays in the air for like a split second. So when the teacher or the parent tells the child to, um, you know, open your workbook, your spelling book, to page 3, take out your black pencil, etc. Now that is a list of things to do. So there's 3 or 4 things to do there. So the child with ADD or ADHD is going to remember the last one. I got my black pen. What was it I was supposed to do? So what we do is we have lots of notes, lists. So a word written on the blackboard or a list on a post-it note on the fridge, you can go back and refer to it.
Yeah.
So often at school, the child sitting at the desk and the teacher gives a command, they're going to forget what came first. But if it's written up on the board, they can look at it, come down to their page. Now, sometimes if it's not structured properly, the instructions need to be very tight, very short, as few words as possible, preferably numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and very distinct. That way they can look at what they're supposed to do, number 1, and go and do it, then number 2, and go and do that. But sometimes if it's not well structured, if the instructions aren't well structured, by the time they've looked at the blackboard and read it and come down to here, they've forgotten. And that's where we're looking at, auditory processing, dyspraxia, dyslexia, is where the visual memory and the auditory memory are a little bit mixed up. And when I get down to the brain, which is here, I'll be able to explain why there. So there are visual learners. Now, I'm not a very good visual learner. I'll see something and forget it. So visual learners, when they're learning to read, they will see the word and remember it. Now, if they have a very poor auditory memory, if they're given a word that they've never seen before, they're going to struggle to spell it. They're going to struggle to even come up with the sounds for it. But if you give them a word that they've seen before, boom, they're right. Some kids are auditory learners, so they're the phonetics. Actually, I should put phonetic learners. So the phonetic learners know that h and h, c and h makes a ch sound. So when they're given a word, they hear the word chicken, ch, chicken, ch, I, k. It could be a k or a ck. N. They know that en makes an n sound, so they process it auditorily, and that's where we have parts of the brain are a bit like a computer. So part of our visual spectrum in the occipital lobes and in the working memory lobes is what they call a visual sketch pad. So we can hold that visual memory for short periods of time, just a couple of seconds. So you go into the kitchen, you've got in your mind the kettle, the tea bag, and your cup, and you know where you put your cup because your visual sketch pad has pulled it off the file, put it on the sketch pad. So you walk into the room and grab your cup, put the kettle on, put the tea bag in. Okay, and then you've forgotten that sketch pad is erased and you're ready for the next one. The auditory, what do they call it? Auditory processing something or other. I used to know all these things. It's the same. They hear the instructions, or they hear the words of a song, or they hear words of a poem, and they can recall it because they have a loop, what they call an auditory loop, and they can keep that loop going until they've sung that that verse or that line of the song several times until it goes into medium term. So it goes from short-term memory to medium-term memory. And the more they play that record, the more they play that song, records are old, it eventually goes into long-term memory. Now, children that don't have a good auditory memory, they're going to struggle with the phonetic side. So they're the ones that will be in those special classes doing a lot of phonetics. And we do know that if you learn the phonemes and the blends and how to sound out words and break words down into syllables and then blend the 2 letters, then blending 3 letters, they're the ones that do really well at school. So phonetics is very important. Then you've got your kinetic learners. Now that's more like me. Kinetic learners don't have a really good visual sketch pad. They don't have a really good auditory memory. So what they've got to do is repeat the same task or the same lesson or read the same book over and over and over until it's embedded in their cells. And that means that when I learn this stuff, I have to do 10 times more work than anybody else, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but that's the way of it. So now the kids with this might be really good at sports. They might be good at balance and dance and learning using the body. So it's not as though they're not bright. It has nothing to do with intelligence. In fact, none of this has to do with intelligence. I've got some charts there that I'll show you of high IQ. A lot of them have high IQ, and some that have, really low IQ. You put the charts together, you're not going to see the difference. Astrology doesn't do that. Astrology will not tell you the IQ of a person. When we get to learning English, it is the most difficult language to learn. Not so much to talk it, but to read it and to spell it. Its rules are rather hideous. Whereas German, Italian, and lots of other languages, they are spelt the way they sound. Whereas we have words that you look at that word, there's no way in the world that you could pronounce it properly until you've heard someone else, you go on Google and how is that pronounced? So, yeah, so if you're German or Italian, I think there's another couple there that I hadn't put in. But they don't have anywhere near the number of special classes for learning that we do because English is a mixed match of French, Norse, the Gaelic, Anglic, Latin, all of the countries that came or the people, the civilizations that came across the English Channel and settled there, they all mixed the language of the original Celtic language. So I think there's only like half a dozen original Celtic words in English. It's just been taken over by the Germanic, the Gauls, the Franks, the Angles, the Jutes, the Danes, the Norwegians. They've all dominated our language.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. Now, do you have any questions before I jump onto the brain?
No, I don't think so. I think this is super helpful that we're going in this order for me. So
okay. So we're going to look at the brain. I hope that's going to be big enough. Make it a bit bigger. Okay, this is the left side of the brain. Now we have 2 brains actually, left and right. Oh, I should be able to. Have I got 2 sides of the brain? This one is. So we have. Oh, darn. So we have left and right, and we have that split down the middle. Now they are quite different. The right brain is quite different to the left brain in its function. So on the left brain is where we have all the language centers. We look at a word and it pops out here in the visual cortex. We hear a word and it hits the temporal lobe. Now, when we hear something or read something, it is channeled to this section here in the parietal. So it's on the edge of the auditory, basically fairly close to the occipital, but the occipital has very rich strong connections, nerves connections to this area. So this is called the Wernicke area, because that's where we take the word or the image, the written word, and we work out what it means. So this is a really important part of the brain. So if that is damaged in some way, which could be from could be something genetic, it could be from a birth trauma, it could be, there's so many ways that we can have brain injuries, which could be like being abandoned, not being fed enough food, trauma. They can all do weird things to the brain, particularly young brains. So this is where we derive meaning. So once you've derived meaning, we shoot that across to the Broca area, where the frontal lobes are now processing information to respond to that person. So someone says something, or the teacher's written something on the board. So now we want to process what we've just found out what they're saying or what they've written. So we draw upon the connections from the frontal lobe to the Broca's, which is where we actually produce the tongue, the face, the mouth, and the volume, the tone, and that. So we need these parts in particular to be fairly well coordinated. So when we have the left brain functioning well, this is very linear, that left brain. It is about reading and writing and thinking and processing linear from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Now, when we hear a sound, both ears will pick it up. So both the temporal lobes will hear that sound. If it's a stick falling out of a tree, the right brain listens to it, recognizes it as an environmental sound, and then tells the rest of the brain, hey, it's all right, dudes. It's not a saber-toothed tiger. It's not the enemy from the other tribe over the hill. They're hunting. We're safe. Now, if it's a word, the left brain picks it up. Boom. It picks up the word. So it's alert now. The right brain will go, okay, now, is this the voice of a friend, a family, a lover? Is it the voice of an enemy? Is it dangerous? Are they in a good mood? Are they happy? Are they going to be pleasant and nice to me? Are they in a bad mood? So I have to be on my guard. So this is the emotional part of the brain. So we are driven by our emotions more than we actually are by what does a word mean. There could be a cough. Boom, the left brain picks it up. It's a cough. The right brain then analyzes it for security, safety means. Now, the parts of the brain that are really important here is that when the Broca's and the Wernicke area on the left brain aren't functioning really well, what happens is the right brain takes over some of the responsibility. So the brain, that is the neuroplasticity that we hear. The brain can adapt and change its function in certain areas to make it easier for the part that's not working really well. The thing is, it doesn't really fix a problem perfectly, because the right brain shouldn't be running really, really fast, which is what the left does. To process what I'm saying, for me to actually think and produce the thoughts, to produce the sounds that makes the speech, it happens in a split second. And the people listening, they're doing the same thing because they're engaging their left brain. So they're understanding what I'm saying, and they're building pictures, and they're drawing upon information from their own background and learning. And it's all coming together for them in a split second. To do that, the left brain is running in the beta range, the very fast brain waves. Now, the right brain doesn't want any of that. The right brain is calm. It should be like a lake in the morning. There's barely a breeze. The mist is just starting to lift. You can hear the crackle of the fire with your bacon frying and your billy with a cup of tea, and you're just sitting back relaxed. That's a right brain. But when we have trauma, when we have injuries, this starts to speed up, and that's when we start to get psychological difficulties. So the two parts of the brain are quite different. The left brain runs fast. Now, when it's running fast and doesn't have a lot of slow brain waves, we're happy. We can actually train parts of the brain to be happy. So depressed people, we'll talk about that later with we might do one on the brain itself, but we can do that. And we can also train parts of the brain that are over aroused, that are racing too fast, which they shouldn't be doing, which is creating all sorts of, anxiety. We can train that part of the brain to calm down.
Well, and that training
Okay.
that's what neuroplasticity means, right? The fact that we can train our brain to adapt to
Yes.
what it normally
Yeah.
doesn't do. Okay.
Yeah. So we we can do that through listening to music, just having a calm afternoon. So when the kids come home from school or hyper, you put them in the swimming pool or you take them out for a walk or something. You find strategies to bring the arousal down. So particularly at dinner time when all hell breaks loose and bedtime, which is just as crazy, you would want to build up 2 or 3 hours earlier with just calm, settled activities, maybe put something nice on TV. But you're looking to bring their arousal down so that when it comes to dinner and then bath and bedtime, they're not high as a kite. So you're not over arousing them. You're not doing silly things, playing games with them and getting them all hyper, because then they get into trouble because they're not going to bed. So we have to use what we've got up here as well. Okay, we've talked about the spectrum theory, autism. Now, autism and Asperger's are quite different to all of these others. And we can see a little bit of the ADD, ADHD, and learning disorders in the charts. There'll be elements there. Not all charts will show it, and it's not always accurate. But autism, Asperger's, they just don't show anything. There's nothing there to really show it. But there are a few clues to what's going on. The key features of autism and Asperger's is anxiety, because they don't understand what's going around them. They don't understand the visual cues of the face. Like, one person said, I know people communicate with their eyes and their face, but I can't understand the language. No, that's a classic thing for Asperger's and autism. So body language and facial expression, tone of voice, they're just not matching with what they understand. They can, often they can read and write really, really well, but to translate that into how do I manage social situations just creates massive anxiety. So yeah, I would never, ever, ever use astrology to diagnose those.
Okay.
Separation anxiety, that does come up in the charts. Behaviour problems, they do come up in the charts. What we're looking for is the classic ascendant, sun and moon being conflicted by the outer planets from Saturn, Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So they're a lot easier to read, and we'll see some charts for that as well. In terms of IQ, here we go. I want to show that one too. Here we go. This is IQ. Now, an IQ score of 100 places you in the middle. You are right there with 68% of the world's population have an IQ between 85 and 115, which means you're normal. When you go past here into, it's one standard deviation, this is two standard deviations. These ones, the 14% of the population, a little bit slower. So they're going to need a little bit more hand. You're not going to see this in the astrology chart, though. We just can't read it. Astrology is good, but it ain't that good. Then we've got 14% of the population are between 115 to 130. So now we're getting into genius range. When we get around 130 plus, you're looking at genius. So it's 68% of the population, quite normal. They go to work, they hold down jobs, they have relationships, and they're on TV, and they're probably a lot of them are politicians. That's the norm. Now, people that have really high IQs have normal children. People that have really low IQs, they have normal children too. Everything that we do keeps on coming back to the norm. Okay, so even though the children born of someone with autism, as long as they're nurtured and supported in a healthy home environment, because person with autism probably not going to be the best parent. They're going to struggle. They're going to need all sorts of help, particularly with government forms to fill in and support that way. But they're going to still have normally neurologically functioning children. So which is actually very interesting.
That is.
Yep. So brainwaves, bring back to the norm. So we talked about that. What to do? Well, the first one is neurofeedback. And neurofeedback is a little system that you put the leads on different parts of the brain, and that reads the brainwaves. That goes to a computer, so you can see the brainwaves on the screen, and you can reward that part of your brain when it is producing the brainwaves that it should be producing. So with neurofeedback, we can target putting a lead on a part of the right brain to train that part of the brain to produce more of the calm brain waves that it needs and to produce less of the fast ones that are causing all sorts of problems. If they have depression, you can put it on different places on the left brain to reward it to produce more fast and less slow. So they're both different. Okay. This one likes fast brain waves and the right one doesn't. It likes calm brain waves. So biofeedback or neurofeedback does work. There are other forms of biofeedback that you can look into because the brain is plastic. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that probably in a later one. Mm-hmm. I find diet is really critical. So if you've got kids and you feed them a lot of junk food, you'll probably notice that they get a little bit hyper and they start crying easily. They're really hard to put to bed. Okay, so children with ADD, ADHD, learning difficulties, autism and Aspergers too, of course, all of these ones, something happens to the gut, to the large intestines, where they get splits called leaky gut syndrome, where proteins are allowed to seep through the gut wall into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be. The proteins should be broken down further into amino acids. Whole proteins going into the bloodstream causes all sorts of problems, health problems. So we want to make sure that their diet is as natural and as raw as possible. And it's pretty hard with kids, but lots of fresh fruit, mm-hmm. And minimal dairy. Dairy is not real good for us. And if you want to look further, just go on Google. There's lots of stuff out there that will tell you how bad dairy is. Soothing music, vitamin, mineral, herbal supplements are helpful. Now, the other one is setting strong limits to their behavior. So what we're doing there is training your child to self-regulate. There's two things that you can, the best gifts you can give your child is to be able to self-regulate their behavior. So in other words, when they start to develop a tantrum, they can calm themselves down. And the other one is to function in society. So they have resilience. And they both come back to parents setting strong boundaries and limits to their behavior. How do you do that? Programs such as 1, 2, 3 magic. 1, 2, don't let me get to 3, right. Here's a consequence. Star charts. I'm a big believer in star charts. Star charts do require a fair bit of understanding and a lot of practice. Never give up on star charts. Once you learn how to use star charts as a means of rewarding your child's appropriate behavior, you're never going to look back. you will just go forward. And what happens is after a while, the kids love it so much that you don't need to do it very often. And in fact, they will be doing good things because they love the rewards. They're not going to do the silly things or the naughty things. They're going to be so excited to get these rewards. So star charts are great. So you are rewarding appropriate behavior. Permissive parenting does not work with these children and can make things worse. Permissive parenting is where the parent gives the child permission to do whatever they want. So it's a complete opposite of setting limits and boundaries. So what happens is the child throws a tantrum because they're not getting the sweets in the shops, in the store. So what does a parent do? They give them what they want. If they don't, that child will escalate their behavior to an out of control tantrum because they haven't been taught to self-regulate their own behavior. That's what we want. We want children to be resilient and to self-regulate, to calm themselves down. Sorry? Yep.
Yeah, we want to give them the confidence to be able to do that. And I think when you say, a lot of people have a negative connotation of what boundaries means. And so when you say boundaries and limits, people automatically are like, no. And I can relate to that because you say that to me and I don't want you to do that to me. Don't set boundaries and don't give me limits. But I see as an adult now who has always struggled with dealing with my own emotions that come on super strong. I would have loved to have been guided with those boundaries so I could feel more secure myself. So it wasn't so much like I need somebody to limit me and to tell me you're being bad. I needed more so guidance and how to feel secure with dealing with those emotions that I didn't have the choice. You know, they just come on so quickly and so strongly. So and with the star charts, I do like rewarding definitely appropriate behavior. I think it's great because it's just another form of showing that like you're proud of them and you love them. I don't like when they take things away. I don't like when they say you're not going to get a star now, because then it's they're so young that I feel like it's going to, as adults, they're going to keep seeking people to keep telling them that they're proud of them, or if they don't, then they might not get that same attention that they've always like relied on for that like that constant feedback of tell me I'm doing good, tell me I'm doing good. So I definitely like rewarding positive behavior, but I think there has to be a balance, because like if you, to me, just as a parent, not obviously not as a psychologist, I'm not a professional in that sense, but in my parenting journey, that's what I've noticed as just observing other people and my own children, my own child, that personally, yeah. So I just wanted to mention that with the star charts, because I do love rewarding, but yeah, there has to be a balance, and you have to change with the times and how your child's changing too as they grow older.
Yep. You're right. You know, with the star charts, by targeting one specific behavior and then writing very clear, short script of how they get their reward, makes it easier. And then you stick it on the fridge. So every time they walk past, it's like, oh, I can't wait to get that one because there's a reward at the end. And it might be, 5 stars or 5 ticks or 5 smiley faces, and there's the reward over there. And it's a whole lesson, actually, a whole presentation on doing
It's
star
awesome.
charts. Yeah, and it's great because once the kids learn that all I've got to do is whatever this says, that is no longer a problem. No tantrums at bedtime. Okay, well, they'll throw a few wobblies, but after 3 or 4 rewards, boom, that's the end of it.
Yeah, well, and
So,
looking at their charts, we can help them have less tantrums too, because like you said, some have this sensory processing disorder and they're so overstimulated that no wonder your child's having a breakdown every day after school, because they've been overstimulated for hours upon hours, and now they finally get to relax and they're like, what do I do with all of this now? And like, yeah, they're going to have a breakdown, and you do have to guide them and see, oh, my child's overstimulated. I'm not going to yell at them for it. I'm going to provide a safe, calm place for them to unwind and explain that that's what's happening, because that's such a scary thing as a child to have a tantrum. like you don't want to. It's not a something that you enjoy. It's like a terrifying feeling. I remember it so deeply because it's so strong, and you
Mm.
don't know why it's happening. So
Yeah, so children that can't regulate their own behavior, what we would call out of control. So the gift that we give that child is the ability not to get out of control and just to feel terrible about it, and then the consequences, and it just builds up. So yeah, these are simple ways that it takes time to learn, and it takes time to practice, and you have to have zero tolerance for anything else. You just have to be laser focused, and it works so quickly. I remember I had two children, and the parents were out of their mind because the kids clashed all the time. It was just a nightmare at home. So I came up with the ice cream pig out, and it was very simple. If you get, I think it was a demerit. If you get more than, I don't know, 10 or 20 demerits, crosses, for fighting and arguing with each other, then you don't get the ice cream at the end of the week.
mm,
I think they got two demerits in the first week, and they got their reward. And I think the parents did that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and the problem was solved. The kids never fought. They would remind each other, hey, don't do this because we'll miss out on the ice cream. And you could use any reward you like. It could be, to go down to the park and feed the ducks or something.
yeah.
But it's also finding what reward is just enough to make them want to change. When
Mm.
you found that reward, because it's really hard. I promise you a motorbike. Well, what's the next reward?
Yeah.
That's equal to that.
Yeah.
Wow, Lamborghini. Okay. So yeah, finding little things like the little toys are great. Stickers and stamps, all those things,
But
appropriate to the child's age.
yeah, and first to do all that, the parent has to have that awareness to begin with. And I think that's something that's passed by so quickly. Sometimes when we think about these problems that children have, it's like, we can say all day that they have these disorders and difficulties, but it's the parent's job as the guide to, okay, now that we know that information, I have to be highly aware of this, and I have to make good decisions as the adult
Yes.
for myself and
Yeah.
be the example, and then curate it, because as our charts show, like each one of us is so different, so like you said, different rewards for different people, and that might work really, really well for one child and maybe not
Mm.
so much for somebody else. But that's why these
Yep.
charts are going to be so cool, because we can even see, have you ever helped somebody figure out what kind of reward that the child might enjoy, like through their chart, like give them suggestions, more so like maybe they want a new football or a new book or something like that?
Yeah. 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 You look at what's happening in the chart. You can sort of pick the personality
Mhm.
theme that is running through them, but we'll look at that in a moment. I'll just finish this one.
Absolutely.
It's okay. Create lots of notes and lists. So if it's visual, if it's written on a bit of paper, your child can refer to it. It's like I was talking about the teacher that writes the instructions very clearly, very short, very concise, and numbers them on the board. The child with a processing disorder is going to be able to follow those instructions. So it's the same at home. If you have a job for your child, you could write on a piece of paper and give them the piece of paper. Or if there are routines, and actually I'm going to write this down as well. Routines
Mm.
are critical with working with children. Children with dysregulation, they function so much better when they know what's going to happen next. And it's like you and I, if we don't know what's outside the front door, just say there's sirens blaring, there's gunshots, we don't know what's outside the door, we're going to get anxious. We don't know what is going to happen next. And it's the same with these children, is that if they don't know what's happening next, they're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. So by having set routines, every single morning is the same, every afternoon and night is the same, they're comfortable and they can function so much better. And I've seen that work with uh, with really severe, profound, disabled and disordered autism, people where they're violent. You introduce rewards and routines, and their violence just disappears. So, yep, routines, love them. Okay, minimize excessive neural stimulation like TV, loud TV, video games, noise. If you can minimize the neural stimulation, the visual stimulation, the auditory stimulation, I don't know about physical, I don't think we get too much physical stimulation, but those two in particular, then that helps them to calm as well. Lots of exercise, ball games, balance games are really good because a lot of these children, they don't have good coordination, they don't have good balance. And so marching where you're swinging your left hand up and your right foot forward is actually helping the left and right brain to communicate better. So anything that involves coordination, catching a ball, throwing a ball, it takes a little bit longer, but they're really good for the brain. Another one is guided meditations and self-hypnosis, which you can do at bedtime. You can, YouTube has lots of children's meditations where they tell a story and, your child can just lie back and listen to the story and hopefully they'll fall asleep. But you would eventually introduce their ability to visualize themselves and create their own stories as they're also learning to breathe out, relax, breathe in, breathe out, relax, and going deeper and deeper and deeper. So this takes a bit of time, but we're fortunate that we do have a lot of stuff on the internet that helps. Okay, let's go find some charts.
You want to grab some water while you're...
That's a good idea. Yep, I'm just going to find where those charts are, and I'm going to put the first one up. Okay, here we go. Okay. What I wanted to show with this chart is Jupiter. Jupiter conjunct the ascendant. Now, what we have is the air-fire pattern. So air and fire are on the air and fire house. So the first house is an Aries house, it's fire. So we have Leo, which is fire. We have Libra, which is air, and this is an air house. We've got Sag, which is fire on a fire house. We've got air on an air house, fire on a fire house, and air on a air house. Now, we can have fire or air, it doesn't matter. But that is, what it does now is that personality, the chart is now stimulated. It just has it's been tweaked up a little bit with a bit more energy. So anything in fire or air or in these houses will be a little bit more activated. Not necessarily a lot, but it will be enough. Now, Jupiter, I've found that Jupiter plays quite a big role in anything to do with the brain. I don't know why, and I might not be right. All that I'm saying comes from my own experience. I can't say that it's definitive. But Jupiter plays a role because he expands things. So Aries ascendant means that your presentation to the world, a Leo ascendant, your presentation to the world is Leonic. It's happy, it's fun. I want to see my friends happy. I want to be happy. So, there's a lot of energy there. We add the magnifying glass of Jupiter, and now we have excessive energy. So, being silly, being too silly, throwing a tantrum, they're big tantrums. So that is the main one there that I wanted to look at. Okay, so that's that one.
The word I like for Jupiter is jubilant. When I think
jubilant, yeah, he can be very jubilant. Yes, overly jubilant. Now, if you want to jump in, Taylor, please do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just really enjoying seeing what you have to say. And are these are the ones that are ADHD? Is that what you're starting with, or are you just picking?
Yes.
Okay.
So ADHD is. Let me see. I've got them all labelled anyway. I think so. So if I forget to say, just look up over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have another one. Now, what I wanted to look at with this one is the beautiful, we got the air and fire, even though we've got Gemini, which is air, on the cusp of a firehouse, and we've got fire on the cusp of an air house, it's exactly the same. It's still the air fire dominance coming through. Okay. But what we have is this massive dominance. We got a 5-planet stellium in Libra. So there's all of this energy in Libra, which is air. It's in a fire house. So it's activated, and it's opposite Chiron. That is so cruel. Chiron is the wound. And we talked about this in the last presentation, that Chiron's just a thorn in the side of this person. Now, if we look at Libra, Libra's problem is that they're constantly compromising to keep the balance. So it could be at work with workmates, they'll compromise their situation to keep everybody happy. In relationships, they're compromising. And we also have Sun conjunct Pluto over here. Sun is, yes, I'd give it a conjunction with Uranus as well. So we got 2 outer planets, 3 inner planets, personal planets, and particularly one is a luminary. So there's conflict in here, and there's also the wound. So we project from this. So this is other people. Other people hurt me. So what does this person do when they're out in the world where this can happen, where they can be wounded? They compromise. That's a hard way to live, by giving up parts of your soul to keep the peace. Now we also have a yod here from the moon and Sun, Venus, and Pluto to Jupiter. So Pluto plays a bit of a role there, and a yod, or what they call the finger of fate, which is converging quincunxes, is, in my world, it builds up pressure and tension, and then it's released. The tension builds up and released. Whether it's an explosion or a positive thing, it can be either. And we just know that Jupiter makes things bigger. He's a magnifying glass of the chart. And fortunately, we do have this grand trine here to help relieve the tension of the quincunx on Jupiter. Oh, look at this. Moon in an air house in a fire sign. So we got a pretty, that's a beautiful, whenever you see a moon in Leo, they're most often really nice people. They're very sensitive. Us Leos, oh, don't criticize us or put us down or tell us that we're no good. That really hurts us. So this is an emotional reaction to, being put down, would be very cutting and hurtful. So this person is very, very sensitive, extraordinarily sensitive, super duper sensitive, and they can't shut their mind up. See, Gemini ascendant is actually quite hard if it hasn't learnt to control itself. We look at Gemini ascendant and think, okay, well, they're the communicators. We've got a lot of air here. We've got a lot of creativity and imagination. This person is a phenomenally creative person. They're a happy, joyful person. So the stories that they create would be like great romances and adventures, like, Gone with the Wind sort of things. But unless they can calm down all this excessive air, which is thinking and worrying, then it makes life a bit hard. So, there's great strengths in this chart, but we need to be mindful that, we can work on managing relationships with others. We can work on managing an overstimulated mind. We can work on managing our emotions. So none of this is not fixable. None of this is too hard, but we can peel back the layers like an onion and go, oh, here's a bit of conflict. And so we would tell this person, okay, well, let's work on this. Let's work on this. Let's work on this. We can even work on that opposition. So all of these things are fixable with the right strategies and the right approach. And that's the advantage of astrology. We can go, well, look, I tell you what, I know exactly what the problem is, and it's relationships. It's how you manage relationships, and the fact that you feel that you've got to keep things peaceful because any form of conflict really hurts, because it sets off that opposition from Chiron. It sets off the doom and gloom of Pluto, which it can sometimes make things pretty unpleasant. So yeah, that's how you would work with this person. Now, do they have ADHD? I tell you what, it certainly looks that way. But I would not diagnose that person with it. I don't like diagnosing, never have. The reason being, I've seen people get better. So they'll come in for therapy with bipolar, and after some fair bit of brain training and therapy, they change very, very quickly. And if you can maintain that change, they slowly adapt into a different person, well, not different personality, but those rough edges that would scratch them, they start to go.
Yeah. So with this chart, would you were saying that one looks like it would have significators for ADHD because of all of the air sign in the fire houses, and then all of the air that's in the fifth house, which is a fire house, and it being a very physical, I mean, all fire is physical, but especially the fifth house. That's probably the largest significator in this chart specifically, right?
Yep. So whenever I see a stellium, which is 4 or more planets in a sign or a house, even a mini stellium of 3 is enough. What it does, it becomes a fiery, airy energy. Even if it was in say Pisces or Taurus, it's not just Taurus, but it's also a little bit air and fire. So this is, well, it's in air and fire already.
Mm-hmm. And
So
so,
it doesn't need modification.
yeah, when you have that stellium, I think I even read in your newsletter where you described it as they're each having difficulty expressing themselves because they're so close together. So would that be like an ADHD kind of symptom, like trying to manage each expression of that planet?
Oh, okay. Now we're talking about archetypes. Yeah. So when we have a stellium like this, those energies are blended. It's like
Oh,
it's
okay.
like you get your steak and your potatoes and your beans and your tomato sauce, and you put it in a blender and turn it on. Burp.
Okay.
That's where, so how do you tease out the steak and the beans and the tomatoes and cabbage and potatoes is really hard. So to actually analyze this takes time. You would sit and work at it, because you've got to go Sun in Libra in the fifth house. What does that mean? And you would write down your keywords. Then Sun in Libra in the fifth house conjunct Venus, and you would write down your keywords. Then you'd go Sun in Libra in the fifth house conjunct Pluto. So you've got a lot of work to do to tease out all of those key words for every single element in that house, every single aspect that it's forming. And then eventually you'll start to synthesize down to just a one line, like one sentence will be the story of what's happening here. But at the moment, we would have 20 or 30 pages of keywords and writing about what is actually happening in this house in relation to the rest of the chart. There's a
Okay.
lot of work that goes into that.
Mhm.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. With the
Uh,
ADHD charts, so basically what you were saying before, you said it was heavy fire and air. So that's what we're looking at in most of these charts, is where all that fire and air is.
Yep. So I call it a dominance. When we have a
Dominant.
dominance in fire, a dominance in air, or a dominance in fire and air. And it could be the house. Oh, here's a house here, or the sign. Doesn't really make much difference, because we have Mars and Pluto. We have a fire planet in a fire house. We've got a water planet in a fire house. Now, that can be pretty steamy. And we do know that steam gives a nasty, nasty burn. So that's what we're having here, because Pluto introduces, and so does Scorpio, it introduces the water element into the fire. So we have that opposing the North Node, which is not too difficult, but it is also conjunct the South Node. So in the past, now there could be a past life or in childhood or something, there was probably a fair bit of steam and a fair bit of burning, so a bit of conflict there. So that's how we would read that. This one here, it's in an earth house. It's not part of the air fire because we haven't got air fire. We've got water, water, earth, water, earth, water, and earth. But they're all in Sag, and it is a conjunction of 5 planets. So boom, that is straight elevated into a massive amount of activity. And we've got Sun conjunct Neptune. So that Sun-Neptune conjunction, no matter what sign or house, is quite Piscean. This person's a bit of a daydreamer. But then we've got to put in Venus and Uranus. Even though these last two, Mercury and Saturn, are out of orb, they're still going to influence that Sun-Neptune conjunction. So reading this massive big conjunction here can be quite complex. So we have very strong Earth because there's 5 planets in an Earth house, in a Virgo house. So that means they like to wash up. They like to clean their fingernails. They don't like dirty hair. They want their partner to be clean. That's a Virgo trait. But it is so energized by having a stellium and by all of them being in Sag that we now have elements of the ADHD air fire traits. And look at this. In astrology, we want to see 1, 2, 3. Okay, the stellium says 1. Okay, this has been activated. So that's the first clue, is a stellium. The second clue is they're all in Sag. So we now have 2 clues. So it's possibly, probably,
because of the fire.
and because now we have Moon, even though she's in an Earth house, a Capricorn house, she's in Aries. So now we have 3 points saying that this person probably has ADD, ADHD traits.
So both for this one.
Both, yeah, because often ADD people are also ADHD, and often ADHD people are also ADD.
Right. Okay.
They're not like you put a bread dough in the oven and out comes a loaf of bread. It's homogeneous. It ain't like that. It's like a pizza. Someone puts down the bread and then or the dough, and then they throw all these things on top. That's a disorder, which has heaps of different symptoms from all different disorders. And it's our role to try and work out, does the pepperoni on this piece make them more ADD? Mm-hmm. And does the olives on this piece make them more ADHD?
Yeah.
That's our job.
So with this one, I have a question. So before I forgot to ask about the areas of life. So we see that this is in the 6th house, which isn't the fire air houses that we've talked about previously. This is a earth house because it's usually ruled by Virgo. Since this stellium is in the 6th house, would you say that would present like a difficult area for this person to maintain if they're not highly aware of it? Or is that if you get it under control, for lack of better words, is that somewhere that person can eventually channel all of it?
That's a good question. Because it's in a Virgo house, we're going to see those qualities amplified in a Sagittarian way, and also in a Sun. I'll bring in Neptune as well, pull him in a Venus way, in a Uranus way, in a Mercury way, and in a Saturn way. So we have so many elements in here. Will that person exhibit it? Oh, yeah, we probably have OCD elements in here as well. We would have, a greater attention to detail than is normal. So they're attending to too much information. And that's the result of a stellium and the Sag being so activated, and the attention to detail, which is a Virgo trait, is amplified as well. So we'd probably look at obsessive compulsive, being unable to switch off from fixating on, the knives and forks on the table. They have to be all aligned perfectly, that sort of thing.
Which is conflicting to Sagittarian energy, because Sagittarius is not about the details. So that'd be another factor.
Yeah, so Sag, if if it was happening, so particularly if it was in the ninth house, then this person would be a politician. In fact, this could even be a politician, even because politicians can talk about anything. They're just so gifted at charm, and that is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is all charm, and all of these, well, Sun and Neptune and Venus are quite charming when they're blending together. We got the softness and the spaciness of Pisces, and we got the relationship and attractiveness of Venus, and they're all in Sag. So that would be a very beautiful, attractive, and engaging person. Definitely. We've
Like
also got
comforting.
some hard and sorry.
Comforting was the word that came to mind when Neptune and Venus and the sun
Oh,
sound.
very much so. Yeah. Probably not so much in Sag. We would, well, it's possible because we've also got the Cancer ascendant. So it's certainly possible that there are elements of compassion and caring and comforting. You know, we got these guys, even though they're they can be a bit naughty together. They can be, you know, but I see more as this as just strong arousal. We have a lot of fire in this person. So I would not necessarily give Sag 10 out of 10 because it's overwhelming and it's influencing the whole chart, because we don't forget we got this opposition here and we got these two guys down here, and they're pretty hard to manage as well. The moon is nicely aspected to Saturn and Mercury, but we have the square to Sun and Neptune. So moon is mostly good, but it's very fiery as well. So we have many themes. They call it state trait. So the state of arousal can flip. So if I'm with my family at a barbecue, excuse me.
Yeah, take your time. We did too.
Then my personality will be, woohoo, let's go play cricket, let's go play baseball, let's go throw the ball around. If I'm in a business meeting, I'd be domineering and dominating. No, we are doing this. If I'm with colleagues, I'll be drinking myself under the table. So our personality changes according to where we are and also to our age. Children, I don't like doing children's readings for children because they haven't lived their chart yet. It doesn't really come out. They don't really live their chart until probably 14. You know, the Saturn opposition.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we do change according to the situation that we're in, and you know, we see it all the time with people. I hope that answered your question, did it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, now this one's another interesting one. I wanted to show this one. This one also has the air and fire houses activated by the signs, but what I wanted to show is the Grand Cross. A Grand Cross for me tells me that this person's had a tough life, quite a tough life, and this person has ADD, ADHD, and borderline personality, which is really tough. So that Grand Cross there shows that hardship is an element or a feature. But the Grand Cross is also like the castle walls. They're big, they're tall, they're thick, they're strong. So it protects them from the harshness of the outside world. They're like the walls of a castle. So when I see a Grand Cross, I'm like, this person's going to be okay. You know, they've got really hard things happening in their chart, but they have a level of resilience that if we erased one of these lines from the Grand Cross, then they wouldn't be quite as resilient. So the castle walls gives resilience. But what I wanted to show here is Sun conjunct Chiron and Pluto. Now, of all the planets in the chart, Chiron and Pluto are the toughest. They have a soft edge, but you have to earn that. You have to submit to their lessons and earn the right to the qualities that they have. So we got the qualities of, you know, astral travel and meditating and healing, and chi energy, dreaming, all those things that comes with Pluto and Chiron. But the lessons are really hard. So this person's got beautiful aspects, fortunately, and we don't have any squares or oppositions to them. So by engaging their imagination, because that's the fifth house, and it's also Sag. In this way, I would say Sag is very positive in this chart. This is their means of a way of managing the hardship that Grand Cross is telling us about their life. Now, it doesn't mean that they were born into a violent household or anything like that. What it means is that the lesson of this lifetime is to recognize the power that they have sitting in their hands and then learning how to manifest it. And the clues are Pluto, Chiron, Sun. That tells us straight away that this person um, really has potential to learn to the extreme edge of what we experience in our spiritual world. It's in Sag, which is like, that's really positive because these guys can be really nasty. And it's in the fifth house of creativity and imagination. So putting them together, we can help that person to come out of the hardship that they have and move forward. So this is another way of using astrology.
Beautiful.
Okay, autism spectrum. I wanted this one. Remember I was saying that autism spectrum and Aspergers, they're uncomfortable because they don't understand the visual and the auditory or the social cues around them. They're just anxious all the time. What we're seeing here, this is a classic case, is Moon conjunct Chiron. Here we go again. There's Chiron and opposite Pluto and Uranus. So this person emotionally is doing it tough. It's a Pisces stellium in a Scorpio house. So this person has fairly severe autism, but uh, they have that water that can hold them together. But these guys are pretty darn tough. So, we can say, well, there's anxiety there. So fortunately, they have a Venus conjunction as well, and they got a lovely Leo ascendant. And Mars, yeah, he's reasonably well connected. Got North Node there. But we have the air fire happening, and we have conflict there. So again, we look at the 1, 2, 3 rule. If it's happening once, yeah, possibly, maybe they're anxious. Twice, probably anxious. 3 times, and then we go, ooh,
Yeah.
it's going to be for them.
So anxious because it's in the 8th house. That's usually something that doesn't want to be seen. It's usually the unseen unless you choose to delve deeply.
Could be, yes. That's one way of looking at it. I also look at it as this is the house of transformation and evolution. And most people don't evolve or change unless they're under pressure. Mm. So it's like if we're sitting on a beach in the Bahamas and someone's massaging our feet, someone's peeling our grapes, and someone's handing us a pina colada. Hey, we don't need to change. But when the hurricane blows our credit card away, we're going to change real quickly. Yeah. So hardship brings about change.
It's a really psychological house itself.
And it is a very, very psychological house, yes. Okay, I might just do one more. I'm going to do a separation anxiety. Mm-hmm. So we got the air fire. We got Aquarius on the cusp of the ascendant. I find that a lot of people that have excess worry and stress, have an Aquarius strong somewhere in their chart or a very strong Uranus. So that is a common feature of their daily life, is calming and dialing down the noise in the head and to stop worrying. But we also have the anxiety of Pluto. We have our buddy there again. Sun opposite Pluto is a tough one. Moon, the fulcrum of Uranus and North Node. That's a T-square there. So we have the features of the air fire. We have the features of ADD, ADHD, but we also have anxiety induced by others outside there. And now, where's oh, here we go. This is explosive. This is a young man that had explosive anger disorder. What do we see? We have oppositions. We have conjunctions with Pluto again. Pluto's in Sag. We got Moon in Scorpio, which means this person takes things very, very seriously to their heart, and when they're in conflict, they're going to either beat themselves up or project it and beat someone else up. You also have Sun opposite Pluto as well. So oppositions are very much me, you. You caused me to do this. Whereas a conjunction is internal, internalizes. The pain is inside me and I just have to live with it, and I cut myself or I become depressed.
Yeah.
So oppositions are the ones we're looking for in terms of being explosive as
Would
well.
you consider oppositions being like extreme because it's either one or the other, and like the whole point is to find how to balance or give equal attention to each side? So is that why it would be explosive too? Because it's just like a tug of war between the two.
Yeah, yeah, yep, exactly. Yeah, you say it in a different way, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, this is a high IQ student that I worked with quite a few years ago now. His chart's no different to any of the others. We've got air fire, we've got a dominance in the 8th house. He's just a really, 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 really smart kid who did not want to be singled out. He hated people saying how clever he was. He just wanted to be one of the normal kids. He didn't want special classes. He didn't want special treatment. He just wanted to be normal. And so we see that by all of the 1 to 5 planets, a stellium in Capricorn. Keyword of Capricorn is I don't tell body anything. I'm super cautious. And I only tell people things if it's a needs to know. They just hold things tight to their chest. So we've got a massive dominance there with 2 personal planets in there. And it's in the 8th house. What is the 8th house? The 8th house is the house of crises. If I'm overexposed, someone can pick on me. So I just want to go into my scorpion shell and hide from everybody.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So
not want to
yeah,
be.
we don't want to be noticed. Yeah. And yet, because you're so smart, oh, you must go in this special class, but I don't want to. We have Moon square Chiron, squares Neptune, Mars, and Uranus here. So Moon in Libra, I just want things to be peaceful. It's in the 5th house of creativity. 5th house is also the house of friendship. So I want to be with my friends, but I'm so busy managing my anxiety and my need to hide, which is the 8th house is hiding in the cave. Capricorn is I don't want to give anything to anybody. It's like a dog with no tails is the happiest dog in the world because no one can pull its tail. So we've got many features here that we want to synthesize into one story.
And Sun Aquarius in the 9th house, and then
Which
Uranus opposite Jupiter. Wow.
yeah, so we also got a little bit of anxiety here with that Aquarius there, but it has a nice aspect to Jupiter, which is
I was
fortunate.
thinking like with the studies aspect of the 9th house and wanting to study, and then Aquarius just being so highly intelligent.
Okay, now I think we can get rid of them. I want to bring up some charts. Now this is somebody we know who is close and dear to us. It's not going to let me. Hang on. Computers. Okay, we're just going to have to go with the little one.
Yeah, I can see it.
I hope people can see it. Okay, this is Taylor's. So what are we going to say about Taylor? Oh, Now, remember, all of my charts are whole signs.
Mm-hmm.
So they all start at 0 degrees of the next sign, and they begin with the first house of the sign that the ascendant is. So we have an Aries ascendant, so Aries, Gemini. So we've got air, fire on the cusps of the air, fire houses. We've got a stellium, a mini stellium in the 4th house, so home and family, of course. And look at this, a beautiful Leo sun in a beautiful Leo house. He is opposite the North Node, but he is conjunct the South Node. So what does Taylor like? She likes her comfort. She likes to, go back to the past. There's good memories, and I can feel them and I can live them. And that's part of your healing. How do we know that? Because you have a stellium in Cancer in the house of home and family. So there's all that nurturing. So there's some hardship. We got Jupiter, Chiron, and I'd pull Sun into that conjunction there. So we know that Chiron can be a right pain in the butt, and Jupiter can amplify that, or Jupiter can be happy about it. So he can play two roles. Fortunately, Jupiter is not stuck in one role. He can do good things. And, part of your learning is through this conjunction there. And what are they opposite? Damn, they're opposite. You've got another mini stellium in Capricorn. Oh, this is interesting. This is the house that we reach up to the stars. This is the house where our feet are planted firmly on the ground. So if we have firm foundations of the 4th house, which is upbringing, our childhood and our background, if we have firm foundations, then we can reach for the stars. And you've got a stellium of outer planets, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus in Capricorn, in Earth, in an Earth house, saying that, I'm going to bust my butt to be successful. You might not put it in words like that, but, whatever you do, you strive for it and you work hard at it. That's what that is telling me, that you don't let setbacks knock you down for too long. And when you manage to, give your son a cuddle and just lie in bed with him for a while, that's the nurturing that your soul really loves. You just soak it into yourselves. And then you're ready for the next journey outside. Oh, and we have Moon in Libra. And the thing that we have a focal point of a T-square with Venus and Neptune and Uranus. So here we have finding balance and peace. That's whenever you see Libra strong in the chart, you know that person struggles with compromise. It's keeping the peace and harmony, and that's important to them, because when they're in harmony, everything flows nicely. So it's working with these guys and this guy here to bring that harmony. And we do have Pluto, Mars. That's a tough one. And we would look at that, but Mars is also part of that T-square. So he is compromising his drive to keep Sun and North Node in harmony.
Mm.
So does Taylor have ADHD? Does Taylor have ADD? Does Taylor have anything?
Yeah, that's what I've never been formally diagnosed, but I can say that I will start a lot of things and then leave them, but I usually do circle back. So I don't know if that's maybe the earth that I do have in my chart. Maybe that helps me have some kind of structure as to not just completely leaving things behind, but I do find it hard to physically sit still. And if I don't do something active every single day, like we run every single morning and play a sport, and Wyatt can barely keep up with me. So if I don't have physical activity pretty much constantly, then I mentally, fail.
Okay, so we could quite safely say that you have elements, okay, because they're there. We can see that the elements, and that corresponds with what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
So we have correspondence between what we're looking at and the real life effects of what's in the chart.
Yeah.
But in terms of a full-blown ADD, ADHD,
I wouldn't say it's anything.
Probably not. No.
Yeah, my experiences haven't really like affected my life to a like a horrible point to where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't get this under control. But it is frustrating for sure
Yeah,
to
it
have
is
to be
frustration.
mindful about
That's
it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's frustration there. It's clear, but
Mm,
yeah, not full blown, but there's elements there definitely.
mm. Thank you.
Uh, okay, I've got to show my. Oh, wait, I'm going to show you my wife. And oh, will I be able to make this bigger? Oh, how it's going to cooperate at last, is it? Oh, darn. Neptune conjunct the ascendant. Now, Neptune is doesn't have form. Like in my understanding and my experience, Neptune lacks form. It's the water, it's the ocean, it's the cloud, it's the moisture, it's the air. It's really hard to contain. So when it is conjunct a luminary, the sun, the moon, or the sun, or the ascendant, then it can have a very strong impact on that person's ability to focus and stay on top. So we have a dominance in Pisces in the 12th house. It's a Piscean house, even though they're all in Virgo. There's a dominance in the 12th house. So if that's very Piscean, that is very Piscean. So, there's some ADD there. So more the inattentive type. Now, this is me, and I've got a Leo stellium in the 8th house. So all of that Leo, it's got 2 fire planets. Oh, heck, it's got all the fire planets in there, Jupiter, Mars, and Sun. And there's also a conjunction with Pluto. So I don't have the air fire on the house cusps. Thank goodness. Imagine how unbearable I would be. But all of that Leo just makes me super duper fiery. And all of that water, because they're all basically conjunct Pluto, which is a very strong water planet, and they're all in a water house, which is the 8th house, which corresponds to Scorpio and Pluto. So it makes me very sensitive as well. So yes, I would say that I would have ADHD. But fortunately, I've got a strong Capricorn ascendant, so that grounds me to be able to make use of all of this creativity of Leo
That structure.
and structure. Yeah. Okay, so have we covered everything? Blimey, Charlie.
Yeah. Goodness.
Come on. Here
See,
we go. I think we have.
you got the list.
We've got it all. So how do we sum this up? How would you sum it up, Taylor?
Goodness. I guess saying again that we should never actually diagnose using this, but to use it as a guide and use it as a tool just to more deeply understand yourself and your loved ones, and to find different approaches to like finding a remedy, or not even a remedy, but just in ways to deal with these different disorders and to accept it. And then you can create plans from this and how to move forward, and you can try different methods, and you can it's just such a great tool to better understand ourselves in so many ways. And in this way, in these um, processing disorders, that is seems to be more prevalent these days. I mean, they've probably been around for a long time, but now that more people are being formally diagnosed, and
Yes,
um,
yes.
and just bringing about such a strong self-awareness through, we already have the personal experiences of these symptoms, and then to see it for the visual learners and for everybody to see it in front of you with these signs and symbols and houses. Like it's so cool that we can use this for this as well.
Perfect. I don't have to add anything to that. Now, how do I?
How do we sign off?
I'm going to try and find. Oh, here we go. Okay, so now I can stop my share. But before I do, I just reinforce that. Where's my chart? I'll get my chart up again. Fairly safe thing to do. Yeah. So when we look at certain features in the chart, we can isolate it to understand it, but then we need to feed it back in to understand all of the chart. So it's like part of the story of this person is here, but that's only one part. There's another part there. There's another part there. And, our role as astrologers is to look at the themes. Again, we go back to the tapestry, to look at the themes and threads and images that flow through the tapestry to bring it all together as one story. So even though we would say, gee whiz, Noel Eastwood looks like a bit of a lunatic, that's only part of who I am. And when we look at all the other features, it tells a more fulfilling story, a story that has more meaning to that person. And that's when you start to get a great deal of joy in your astrology, is to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Beautifully
Okay,
said.
so I will stop the share and go back to Taylor.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you so much
And
for sharing your wealth of knowledge and all these different charts. It's so wonderful to see it illustrated right in front of us and to have your experience. So